ध्यायेन्नित्यं महेशम् रजतगिरिनिभं चारुचन्द्रावतंसं रत्नाकल्पोज्ज्वलाङ्गं परशुमृगवरभीतिहस्तं प्रसन्नं पद्मासीनं समन्तात् स्तुतममरगणैः व्याघ्रकृत्तिं वसानं विश्वाद्यं विश्वबीजम् निखिलभयहरं पञ्चवक्त्रं त्रिनेत्रम् ॐ नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। ॐ गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पादं शङ्करं लोकशङ्करम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्स सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। Namaste everyone. Hello.
Namaste, sir.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So, sir, Shalabh has joined us today. So, I send you a message, I think.
Pardon me?
So, I send a message to you. So, Shalabh has joined today.
Acha, namaste Shalabh. Yes, I noticed.
From undergrad, and he's pursuing his PhD in Northwestern University in economics.
Very nice. Welcome, Shalabh. Yeah. Pleasure to have you join. Thank you. So, Pranav, you're doing this excellent thing of projecting on the screen, right?
Yes, sir. I will start that.
So we can read directly. Acha. Om Dhritarashtra uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Mamaka Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. Shri Bhagavan uvacha Klaibyam Masmagamah Partha Naitatvayupapadyate Kshudram Hridaya Daurbalyam Tyaktvottishta Parantapa Ashocyananvashocastvam Pragyavadanscha Bhashase Gatasu Nagatasunscha Nanushochanti Panditaha Natvevaham Jatu Nasam Natvam Neme Janadhipaha Nachaiva na Bhavishyamaha Sarve Vayamatah Param Dehinosmin Yatha Dehe Kaumaram Yauvanam Jara Tatha Dehantara Praptihi Dhirastatra na Muhyati Matra Sparshastu Kaunteya Shitoshna Sukha Dukkhada Agamapayino Anityaha Tanstitikshasva Bharata Avinashitu Tadvidhi येन सर्वमिदं ततं विनाशम् अव्ययस्यास्य न कश्चित् कर्तुमर्हति अन्तवन्त इमे देहा नित्यस्योक्ताः शरीरिणः अनाशिनो अप्रमेयस्य तस्माद् युध्यस्व भारत य एनं वेत्ति हन्तारं यश्चैनं मन्यते हतम् उभौ तौ न विजानीतो नायं हन्ति न हन्यते न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित् नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे वासांसि जीर्णानि यथा विहाय नवानि गृह्णाति नरोपराणि तथा शरीराणि विहाय जीर्णान् अन्यानि संयाति नवानि देहि नैनं छिन्दन्ति शस्त्राणि नैनं दहति पावकः न चैनं क्लेदयन्त्यापो न शोषयति मारुतः जातस्य हि ध्रुवो मृत्युः ध्रुवं जन्म मृतस्य च तस्मादपरिहार्ये अर्थे न त्वं शोचितुमर्हसि अथ चैत्वमिमं धर्म्यं संग्रामं न करिष्यसि ततः स्वधर्मं कीर्तिं च हित्वा पापमवाप्स्यसि हतो वा प्राप्स्यसि स्वर्गं जित्वा वा भोक्ष्यसे महीम् तस्माद् उत्तिष्ठ कौन्तेय युद्धाय कृतनिश्चयः सुखदुःखे समे कृत्वा लाभालाभौ जयाजयौ ततो युद्धाय युज्यस्व नैवं पापमवाप्स्यसि त्रैगुण्यविषया वेदा निस्त्रैगुण्यो भवार्जुन निर्द्वन्द्वो नित्यसत्त्वस्थो निर्योगक्षेम आत्मवान् कर्मण्येवाधिकारस्ते मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भूः मा ते सङ्गोऽस्त्वकर्मणि अर्जुन उवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशव स्थितधीः किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम् श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते दुःखेषु अनुद्विग्नमनाः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते यः सर्वत्रान् अनभिस्नेहः तत्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभम् नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता यदा संहरते चायं कूर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्य इन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता
ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः
संगस्तेषूपजायते संगात् संजायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति रागद्वेषवियुक्तैस्तु विषयानिन्द्रियैश्चरन् आत्मवश्यैर्विधेयात्मा prasadamadi Indriyanam hi charatam yanmano anuvidhiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavamivambhasi tasmad yasya mahabaho nigrihitani sarvashah indriyani indriyarthebhyah tasya pragya pratisthita या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागार्ति संयमी यस्यां जाग्रति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनिः. Is it karmanaiva?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
कर्मणैव हि संसिद्धिम् आस्थिता जनकादयः लोकसङ्ग्रहमेवापि सम्पश्यन् कर्तुमर्हसि प्रकृतेः क्रियमाणानि गुणैः कर्माणि सर्वशः अहङ्कारविमूढात्मा कर्ता अहमिति मन्यते इन्द्रियस्य इन्द्रियस्यार्थे रागद्वेषौ व्यवस्थितौ तयोर्न वशमागच्छेत् तौ ह्यस्य परिपन्थिनौ. अर्जुन उवाच अथ केन प्रयुक्तोऽयं पापं चरति पूरुषः अनिच्छन्नपि वार्ष्णेय बलादिव नियोजितः. श्रीभगवानुवाच काम एष क्रोध एष रजोगुणसमुद्भवः महाशनो महापाप्मा विद्धयेनम् इह वैरिणम् धूमेन आव्रियते वह्नेर् यथादर्शो मलेन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेन इदम् आवृतम्. तस्मात् त्वम् इन्द्रियाण्यादौ नियम्य भरतर्षभ पाप्मानं प्रजहिह्येनं ज्ञानविज्ञाननाशनम्. इन्द्रियाणि पराण्याहुः इन्द्रियेभ्यः परं मनः मनसस्तु परा बुद्धिर् यो बुद्धेः परतस्तु सः. एवं बुद्धेः परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्य आत्मनमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्. Oh, very nice. That is the end. Okay, so where were we? Tadvidhi, was it? 334? 434?
434, yes.
434. So, very, just to pick up a little bit beforehand, Bhagavan is describing the various kinds of yajna, right? So, the whole description of yajna starts, I think, almost near 24. And first, of course, the description is given of the one in Brahmi Sthiti, who's 23, Gata Sangasya Muktasya Jnana Vasthita Chetasaha Yajna Acharata Karma Samagram Praviliyate. So this description of the wise man of discrimination. Pandit, who is the Pandita? So that is given in the beginning of the chapter as an answer to what is work and what is non-work. Starting in 16. Then, and before that itself, Lord has explained his own relationship to work, which is works do not taint me. Namam karmani limpanti, na me karma phale spruha, etc. So, and then he describes what is the nature of people who in this world, right? And then he says how kankshantah karmanam siddhim, people in the world offer sacrifices to gods, desiring success of their works. So he has described in some sense, you may say, three aspects. And this occurs in response to the fact that the chapter starts with his having transcended time. The description of Sri Krishna having transcended time instructed Vivaswan, to which Arjuna asks, How is that possible? So then Bhagavan reveals his wisdom and true nature, that one who has transcended these gunas is beyond the gunas and even beyond time. And then he describes his own nature and his relationship to work, and how by knowing his divine birth and work, that itself is purifying. Is not whosoever thus truthfully knows my divine birth. Number 9, Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvatah. That person is not born again after giving up his body, thereby already giving a very shubha aram, a very positive opening. Bhagavan goes on to say, and also giving hope to all aspirants. In the next one, he says, Vitaraga bhrakrodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhava magataha. So again, he's saying, many have reached my status. So this is very inspiring right there. Two great inspirations as we read the chapter. And then he says how everybody in the end resorts to Sri Krishna himself. Men tread paths leading to me. Manushyaha partha sarva. Mama vartaman anuvartante manushyaha partha sarvasha. 11. Then he says, how do people in the world behave? How they have desires for success of their works, etc. We discussed how in the bhulokam, quick is the success born of works. What is the nature of the other lokas? And then why the chaturvarnyam maya srishtam? Why this varnashrama dharma was instituted by Bhagavan himself according to the divisions of Prakriti's constituents, guna karma vibhagasha. And though he is the author, he is the immutable non-agent. Vidya akartaram avyayam. Mam vidya akartaram kartaram api mam vidya. Therefore. And then he describes his nature and relationship to work, which I think I connected to the notion of Ishvara and Yoga Sutra, that form of Purusha who is not touched by work, tainted by karma. Then he says, now here is the instruction, this knowing, ancient seekers did work. And then he says, but people are confused. What is work? What is non-work? What is work to be done? Forbidden work? What is non-work? Right? Verses 16 and 17. Karmano hyapi bodhavyam cha vikarmanaha. Akarmanascha bodhavyam gahana karmano gatihi. Then he goes on to say, this very powerful verse 18, like a Zen koan. Karmanya karma yak pashet akarmani cha karmayaha sa buddhiman manusheshu sa yuktaha kritsna karma krit. So again, this is a verse to be memorized and meditated on. And then he goes on, well, this is the state of the one who has attained the Brahmi Sthiti. And then he goes on to describe the state of the realized one. What is the realized one's relationship to work? That is in verses following 19, 20, 21, etc. and 22 and 23. Then he goes on to give a very powerful and central statement in this, in a way establishing Bhagavad Gita in this verse as a truly Advaitic text. In what way? Brahmarpanam brahmahavihi brahmagnau brahmana hutam brahmaiva tena gantavyam brahma karma samadhina. So there can be no greater Advaitic verse than that, appearing in chapter 4, 24. Then, having made this very profound statement, which again, worthy of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana. Then he goes on to describe what are the various manifestations of this Brahman's work, as it were. That is 25. Some yogis offer sacrifices to deities, others sacrifice in the fire of Brahman by means of the sacrifice itself. There we talked a little bit about Purusha Suktam, connection to the notion of that yajna. And then he goes on to talk about the siddhas and the various lokas in 26. Shrotradini indriyan yanye samyamagnishu juhvati, etc. Then 27, again, different kinds of yajnas. Tapas, Swadhyaya, Yajna, etc. And then pranayam, very nice, concise description of prana in Sushumna is given in 29. And then he talks about niyata ahara, various kinds of vrat, restraint of diet, restraint of pranas, etc. And then he says, very important is yajna shishta amrita bhujo yanti brahma sanatanam. They partake of the ambrosial remains of these sacrifices. Yajna shishta, prepare the eternal Brahman. The non-performer of sacrifices does not own even this world. Why then, O best of Kuru princes, speak of another? Ayam loko asti ayajnasya kuto anyah kuru sattama. This is, say, he's exhorting that in the Bhulok, one has to perforce perform some yajna. Better to perform the prescribed kind of yajna, as he's saying. And then the very powerful verse 32, which further says, again gives this explanation. What is the right kind of yajna? What is the work, karma? Evam bahubidha yajna vitata brahmano mukhe. So, in one of the very beautiful recit chanting of Yajurved, done in TTD, I believe. I was listening to the recording, and in usually prefacing these recordings, some wise person from that establishment will say a few words. What is the you may say, it's not a Phalashruti, but you may say it is encouraging people to listen to this, right? So one of them says in Tamil, Bhagavanodiya moochu kaatudam Vedam. So let me explain what that means. In translated from Tamil, it means the very breath of the Lord is the Ved. Okay. So that Ved is literally the breath of the Lord. And that resonates in this where he says, Evam bahuvidha yajna vitata brahmano mukhe. Thus have many sacrifices been spread out in the pages of the Veda, but actually, literally speaking, on the face of Brahman, right? Karmajan vidhitan sarvan evam gyatva vimokshase. But nevertheless, although exhorted to perform works in Bhulok, yet one must know that all the 7 worlds are only formed of works and thought alone, which was the Mundaka Upanishad verse. Parikshalokan karmachitan brahmano nirvedamayat nastya katam kritena. And then the exhortation is not just to stop with that performance of prescribed karmas in the Ved, but to go beyond that karma kand into the jnana kand. So one must then understand the essential knowledge that is conveyed in those rituals, those prescriptions, the rich of the Ved. What does it mean? What is the adhyatmic purport of those verses? Don't just stop. Immediately it says, Evam gyatva vimoksha. Only that will lead you to the liberation. Know them all to be born of works, knowing thus you will be liberated. So this is very, very important, is the knowledge of both Karmakand and Jnanakand. Then now leading up to the verse which is going to take us forward. So this is all, so much has been said, 32 verses of each one shining brilliant gem of knowledge, right? Then Bhagavan says, Shreyan dravyamayat yajnat jnana yajna parantapa sarvam karma akhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. The sacrifice of knowledge, parantapa is the scorcher of foes, is superior to the sacrifice of materials. Dravyam is the material sacrifice. Jnana yajna is superior to that. Why? Because all these works, sarvam, karma, akhilam, partha, all in the 7 lokas formed of these works only, they all culminate in one thing, which is knowledge. So this is again a very, very central verse, and it can create a kind of sometimes a confusion, which again and again Bhagavan clarifies through all the 18 chapters. Um, while in Bhulok, he exhorts Arjuna to work and all good people to work. But at the same time, he emphasizes that it's only the Gyan that will lead to the liberation, right? So when we talk of the four marg, we say Jnana Marg, Bhakti Marg, Bhakti Yog, Jnana Yog, Karma Yog, Raj Yog. Of these, definitely through Jnana Yog, in the form of Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, it is possible to attain liberation, to know the truth. But this Jnana Yoga, if one studies in great detail, following, say, path blazed forward by Jagat Guru Bhagavan Shankaracharya, we can take any of his texts, Prakarana Granth. Say you take Upadesha Sahasri, last few verses he says, all this is very good, but if you're not able to know this, you must first at least try to master Raj Yoga. Correct? If you're not able to master the Raj Yoga, at least you should master Hatha Yoga first. So there must be, the passions are brought under control. So he has given a very clear progression of how the mind operates. It is difficult to jump directly to that Jnana Yoga. It is difficult to attain the state of mind where one just listens, contemplates, meditates, and immediately attains the truth. Undoubtedly, it was possible. It is probably still possible to highly purified minds. Like we say, it is like a camphor. You put the fire on the camphor, the fire of knowledge, it just blazes forth. That is, in my opinion, knowing my mind and my path, a difficult, shall we say, challenging state to reach immediately. Perhaps some may, but in my own experience, first starting humbly with Hatha Yoga, mastering the pranayams, etc., moving on to Jnana Yoga, moving on to Raj Yoga and Jnana. This is more, in my more, shall we say, beginner's approach, is safe and stable. Bhakti Yoga is even faster, even better. If the mind can be made superbly devotional, then all those siddhis that come from Hatha Yoga and Raj Yoga will definitely be available. That level of bhakti is rare. We do see it in someone like, say, Meera, Devi, these kind of very special extreme, or the saint composers like Tyagaraja or Muthuswami Dikshitar. In them, it is there, definitely. There is no doubt about it. Each must choose. If that level of devotion is accessible, it should be cultivated. It will lead to the truth. Even if it is not there, little by little cultivating will definitely help. So Bhakti Yoga also is clearly defined as a path that can lead straight, and it will lead to the same end as Jnana Yoga. In the end, there is no difference in the wisdom of the Jnani or the Bhakti of the Jnani. No difference in the wisdom of the Bhakt or the Bhakti of the Bhakt, in the sense, right? Wisdom of the Bhakt is same as Bhakti of the Jnani. They are no different. Because the end is the same.
Dr. Shankar, I have a question on the line of the Bhakti Yoga. So yeah, it's very interesting. Thank you. This is a big picture. So I have a question. When going through all the gospel and then going after Ramakrishna's teaching, Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, he really emphasizes in the Kali Yuga, the path of bhakti is much easier and more suitable. Maybe during that time, in the 19th century, during time, the way the society or the way it was, maybe he was suggesting that's what he really emphasizes. Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, other things are good, but those would be very, and I was contemplating on that, like.
Absolutely. So, nevertheless, you have read his life story, and he practiced pranayama. He is a master of yoga. He took also instruction from Totapuri, I believe, a Vedantin, right? So that bhakti led him to do all those things, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, everything.
right, but I'm not contradicting at all. That is totally true, and as I said, but you see, even in the time from Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna's time to now, there has been change in society, right?
Right. Yeah.
The mind, even at the time of his generation, to the mind now has changed, right?
Yes.
And in general, the mind has these different aspects. It has, you might say, an emotional aspect, which is drawn towards devotion, right? It also has a rational, intellectual aspect, which wants consistency of some sort in its worldview, right? And it, of course, has to have an active aspect where it is engaged in thought and doing, right? So because all those aspects are there, I would say there's nothing wrong in what he's saying. It's totally true. And perhaps I would say the generation in his time may have been a simpler mind, more tuned to those devotional activities, right? In today's time, if I take the next generation who are younger than me now, and I tell them to even just say the total number of shlokas and suktas that I say daily, you will not find many people willing to do that. You see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, sure.
And it's for that reason that Bhagavan says there are these paths. Each great seer at that time will emphasize correctly the path that is most easy in that state of society, right? Right. Now, to come back to the original point, the Jnana, Raja, Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga stand on one level. The Karma Yoga purifies the mind, but in the end, it will not lead to the. It purifies the mind and prepares it. It is preparatory compared to the other three. That is what this verse is emphasizing. That however superb your karmas are, however perfectly in accord with Vedic Dharma they are, the maximum they lead to is the Svargalok. That is typically the limitation imposed by most of the non-Hindu religions. You see, most of the non-Hindu religions are always talking about heaven and hell only. Bhur Bhuva Suva. Beyond Suva, there is not much conception. But in Hinduism, we know there is Maha, Jana, Tapa, Satyalok, right? So the very notion that beyond works, there are these realms accessible through meditation is something that Bhagavan is trying to emphasize here. Nevertheless, if the works are not done to some level of perfection, you may say, even the first three cannot be reached. Right?
Right.
That is the intent here. So not demeaning works, not saying that it is not important. They are important. They're important to purify the mind. Their purification is a preparatory stage to then undertake one of the other paths with great vigor and think. And like you were quoting, absolutely. If the mind can be drawn to devotion, there is no easier path. There is no doubt about that. Right? Of those three, In Kali Yuga, Bhakti Marg is the easiest. The other ones, the Raja Yoga path is not for everyone. I have said right from the beginning. It's path of the warrior, right? So the warrior's path is going to be one in which there is battle,
Yes.
right?
Sir, can you tell me briefly what Raj Yoga is?
So by Raja Yoga, basically, I'm speaking broadly of what is given in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, the paths prescribed for training the mind through yoga to attain samadhi.
For instance, pranayam, etc.
Pranayam is one of the Ashtanga, right? 8 limbs. Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. This 8-limbed yoga. So, Mahesh, did that clarify what?
Yes, Dr. Sankar. Yeah, that clarify. And in a big picture, the way the Gita is organized, so it's directly coming from the Bhagavan's Bhagavan's mouth, and he's saying it. So starting with the way it is organized, starting with Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and renunciation, meditation.
Right.
It comes later. The Bhakti Yoga in the Gita, it comes much later. So the way the way it is organized. So I was wondering because it was probably trying to suit all the time.
Now, you see, let us examine Bhakti Yoga itself, right? Since we are talking about it, how is it? It is not different at all, right? What are you doing in Bhakti Yoga? If you take, say, Saint Tyagaraja, he was always thinking of Ram, right? So, if your mind is fixed on one object and continuously thinking of it, what is that?
Dhyan.
Dhyan.
Yeah.
It is dhyan. Right?
Right.
There's no difference. Because it is fixated on one image or deity, we think, oh, it is bhakti. No, it's the same thing, right? If the dhyan is continued indefinitely with great laser-like concentration, what is it going to lead to? Samadhi. No difference. Right? No difference at all. His mind has become, the mind of the bhakta has become so one-pointed, right? That that bhakta cannot see anything other than the Lord anywhere, right? Okay, now let's move. Lot of background to move forward. So we finished with verse 34 last time. So having established all this background, now what is Bhagavan saying? So he has explained this, that you must know this knowledge, this Brahma Gyan, right? So tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninaha tattvadarshina. So we read this. You must know that pranipatena, through prostration, pariprashnena, through exhaustive questioning, sevaya, service, upadekshanti, they will instruct you, te jnanam, in this knowledge. Jnaninaha, who will instruct you? The ones who know. Tattvadarshina, those who have realized the truth. So this is the means to the end. Furthermore, what is this special knowledge? Yat jnatva na punar moham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutan yashesena drakshyasya atmanyatho mayi. Yat jnatva, knowing which, na punar moham, not again will you be deluded. Yasyasi Pandava. By grasping that knowledge of Pandava prince, you will no longer be deluded as you are now are. Yena, instrumentally, by which Bhutani asheshena, without any exception, all beings. Drakshyasi, you will see. Drishpashya, in future tense, you will see. Atmanyatho mayi. Atmani, you will behold all beings in the self with the capital S. In one's true self. And then in me. Atha mayi. So this is what is called Jnana Vijnana, right? So in the Mahavakyas, you know, there is a particular sequence I have told you, right? The Mahavakyas.
Yes.
So first one is
Prajnanam.
Brahman Satyam Jagan Mithya. Right? First, a conviction that which is seen through the senses is false perception, Mithya. That indeed there is something that is true, which is denoted Brahman. Then Prajnanam Brahma, right? That Prajna state achieved through Yoga Dhyana. I am Atma Brahma. Then this true self is nothing but, right? Then Tattvamasi. This the Guru says that you are, that this Atma is indeed you yourself in your true nature. And then the aspirant says Aham Brahmasmi. Conviction. Mentally convinced that yes, Ekam Advitiyam Brahma. Right? So then this thing that we are denoting as Brahman is without a second. Then Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. So that notion that in the last two, Evam what did I say? Tattvamasi, Ekam Advitiyam Brahma. That fact that without a second, that is the state of beholding all beings in the self. Yena Bhutani Asheshena, right? Because there is nothing left out. Note 2. Then he says, and also Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma, that all this that is seen is the self, right? Now, naturally, the state of Bhagavan Sri Krishna to impart all this wisdom can be nothing other than the source. It comes from the source, right? And so, therefore, logically, this must also be in me, right? Bhagavan is nothing but that perfect lamp through which this light is shining, right? We are all lamps with lampshades, but our lampshades don't shine that light as with that transparent clarity that Bhagavan shines, right? It is that perfection which allows him to say this, that you will see everything in me. So, then he says, 36. Api chedasi papebhyah sarvebhyah papakrittamah sarvam jnanam alpavenaiva vrujinam santarishyasi. This is a very fantastic verse and very unique, again, I feel, to our Hindu Vedic tradition. No one is condemned out of the realm of redemption in Hinduism. Nobody. There is no Satan who is forever banished, right?
Yes.
Even our worst asuras all gain salvation. Like Ravan, at the instant of death, complete mergence with the Lord, right? So here Bhagavan is giving inspiration to all of us. Api cheda, even if you be papebhya sarve, of all the papis, papakrit tamaha. So papakrit taraha, papakrit tamaha. Comparative superlative. Even amongst them, you are the worst, right? Not worse, but worst, right? Sarvam jnana alpavena iva. Even if you are the very worst, sorry, I'm saying jnana plavena iva. That's what I was saying. What is this? I'm mixing up. It's not alpa, it's not small. Plavena. This plava is a boat. Jnana plava is the boat of knowledge. Eva. Through that instrumental case, Eva, Vrijinam Santari, you will go beyond such. So this is again, there is a very important thing, a question that should arise. So what is sin? Okay. So just I was watching Swami Chinmayananda's Gita capsules because they are so enjoyable. Every day if we get a chance, we gather around in the afternoon and watch one or two of these. So very delightful. So just today he was talking about this notion of sin. How it is, there are do's and don'ts. And he kind of course, in his inimitable style, he gave a lot of wisdom. But he skirted one point, which I want to really hit the nail on the head here. Okay. Sin is ignorance. Papam means ajnanam. Equate. That's all it is. Okay. Now, Swami Chinmayananda gave a very powerful and practical definition also. He said to do something when you know you should not do it is sin. That is a very good. That's a very practical, provisional, practical, functional approach to sin, right? So, for instance, he gave example. There's a one-way street and somebody goes up the one-way street. If the person cannot read the sign and goes up the one-way, policeman stop him, shout at him, and he says somebody may pretend they are not from that country. They'll try to speak in some fake language. So the policeman say, idiot, you couldn't even read the sign. Go, right? So his point is, even the policeman will forgive you if you don't know the language or you're new to the country, right? But if you're a guy who lives in the neighborhood and he sees you going in the wrong way, he's definitely going to catch you, right? So his point there was, in the practical world, that sin is basically, there is a conscience and intellect within us telling what is good for you, and the mind is doing something contrary to that. This is perfectly accurate. It's very useful, very professional, very functional, accurate, correct, right? And this is still in the world of duality. So there is virtue and sin, right? And one must negotiate the world of duality with this litmus test and guide. But what Bhagavan is saying is that this is true, but the very act of sinning, so to speak, is actually a product of this fundamental ignorance, right? That ignorance that I am actually separate from what I see, right? That I am somehow separate, that I have divided myself into this small individual, right? That is what the Christians mean when they say original sin. The moment I say there is another, that's a sin. Okay? So you can only get rid of that at some level in the state of oneness. Right? The moment there is a duality, the moment there is an I and an other, is the beginning of sin. Right? Then there are other sins. Once that separation starts, then there is my name is attached, my body is attached to that, then my family, my environment, preservation of all the stuff, all this comes. Then, of course, desire, then carrying out my desires contrary to dharma, contrary to societal norms. All this is secondary, right? It comes afterwards, right? But if a person lives even the most dharmic, righteous way, which is good, they still have to confront eventually the original sin, right? Without that, this point, this punarmoham will not die, right? So therefore, when we think of sinners, viewed from this lens, it takes on a different dimension, right? We don't have to be critically judgmental of other sinners. If we just reflect on the mind inside here itself, we'll see that potential is there beautifully present in every mind. Okay? There is nothing that this mind is not capable of, both positive and negative, right? Then a sort of equanimity settles in, right? And remember, I've told you that famous, my favorite Kabir doha is Bura jo dekhan mein chala. Same thing here, right? Bura na miliya koi. Jab man khoja apna, mujhse bura na. This is only a jnani can say this, right? The capacity to self-reflect and see the potential for all that pop inside, whose root is nothing but the original dual separateness thought. That only a jnani can bestow on us. So anyway, but from a more practical viewpoint, this is inspiring, right? Sometimes we may beat up on ourselves and say, oh, I am such a sinner. I have done so many bad things, right? What does all that do? It creates a heavy tug and drags us down. That is not to say that, yeah, happily go ahead and repeat is foolish, right? But at every instant, there has to be confidence that I can shed that. And at this instant, regain my original state, right? If that confidence is not there, if that inspiration is not there, if that empowerment is not there, then spirituality and religion are useless. Useless. You don't need that kind of spirituality and religion, right? It must inspire, it must empower, it must move towards a better feeling, right? An opportunity to engage in a more positive way with whatever we have to do from today onwards, right? So that is where this liberating thing. So if one takes refuge in Bhagavan Sri Krishna, he says, listen, you come to me, okay? However terrible your past is, it will start to improve, right? Will it be, he's not saying it's going to be easy, but he did say that the raft of knowledge will help you. It will be, of course, as hard as it is to let go of that, but the mind will slowly correct itself. Every time, every engagement with this knowledge will slowly turn the mind, and slowly, the mind will let go of those old habits, right? The wisdom, buddhi will dominate progressively, and in time, as night follows the day, success will be assured, is assured. And thus you have from the authority of no less than Bhagavan himself, right? That is why Bhagavad Gita is so delightful to read, full of inspiration, empowerment, and confidence, right? So let us quickly, I think we only have a few verses here. So I thought maybe if you're willing to wait a little bit, we could complete. So let us see how it goes. So now Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, so jnanam katham nashayati papam iti sadrishantam uchyate. How does knowledge destroy sin? Right? Now this will connect directly to what I said. If knowledge is ignorance, sin is ignorance, antidote to ignorance is knowledge. So knowledge must destroy sin, right? So if you like a mathematical mind, earlier you put sin equals ignorance, right? And so the antidote, right? Opposite of that is knowledge. So obviously if you fill it, it will negate it, right? It will destroy it. So answer is proffered with an example. Yathai samiddho agnir bhasmat kuruter juna jnanagni sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. Bhasmasat kurute. So beautiful. Yatha edhansi, just as a fuel. Samiddho, these are the sticks, special sticks we put in the yajna. Samid. There is actually a practice called Samidhadanam, right? Sanskar for brahmacharis. So kindle the agni and put these samids. These samids are meant to be our samskaras, our vasanas, right? Fire sticks. Just as those agnihi, the fire, bhasmasat, it makes it into ashes. Kurute, Arjuna. Just as fire reduces fuel to ashes, as a kindled fire reduces all fuel to ashes, so Jnanagnihi sarva karmani bhasmasat kurute tatha. In the same way, this fire of knowledge burns all the karmas. Right? See, there is a lot of, when you get into discussing karma with, in the ordinary conventional sense, people talk about, oh, my bad karma, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to somehow heal my karma. Listen, there is only one thing that is going to heal it, and that is knowledge. Right? That is this Brahma Vidya. So, no amount of propitiations of the Navagrahas, etc., in the long run will truly exterminate the works, karmas. Knowledge dawns. When the fire of knowledge dawns, then it will burn them very quickly. Right? On account of this. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. Tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalen atmani vindati. Nothing exists here. Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate. There is nothing here that is more purifying than jnana. Tat swayam yoga samsiddhihi. That on its own, on one's own, through yoga, perfected in yoga, kalena, in time, atmani vindati. Perfected in yoga, in course of time, one wins it in one's own self. So here it is worthwhile to take the translation commentary. There is nothing here comparable to knowledge as purifier. One perfected, that is purified and made competent and intent on liberation through the practice of yoga, meaning karma yoga and the yoga of concentration. Karma yogena samadhi yogena cha. Right? Purifying the mind, concentrating the mind. Samsiddha, samskritaha, yogyatam, apannaha, san. One wins it in the self after the lapse of a long time. San mumukshuhu, kalena mahata atmani. So the intent, the one who is intent on liberation. So kalena mahata atmani vindati labhate ityarthaha. After a long time, the one intent on liberation wins this in the same self. How? Through the practice of yoga, in which here Bhagavan says karma yoga for purifying the mind, and the samadhi yoga, which is Raj Yoga. So then next, the means by which knowledge is won unfailingly. Now the sadhana. How do I get there? Right? The means. Yena ekantena jnana prapti bhavati saha upayah upadishyate. The upaya. Shraddhavan labhate jnanam tatparah samyatendriyaha. Jnanam labhva param shantim achirena adhigacchati. Shraddhavan, the man of faith, labhate jnanam, gains knowledge. Tatparaha, quickly. Samyatendriyaha, the one who has with great intensity, intent on it, is tatparaha. Samyatendriya, the one who has mastered his senses. Jnanam labdva, having gained this knowledge, param, this param shantim, supreme peace, achirena, without delay, adhigachati, attains. So in fact, I was just thinking, what is it that draws us to this satsang? It is love of peace and wisdom, right? It is love of that wisdom which leads to the lasting peace. Because it is the peace that gives rise to all the good feeling, right? Ashantasya kuto sukham. Remember that verse, right? So that shanti, this is what is to param shantim adhigachati, the supreme peace. How? Knowledge is the means to that supreme peace. Why we are all drawn to this is we are reading about the ultimate knowledge which is productive of that supreme peace. So Shraddhavan. Shraddhavan is, Shraddha we know by definition, Guru Vedanta Vakyadi Vishwasaha. So faith in the words of Guru and the Vedanta. Then with that and intent on it and controlled senses wins the knowledge. So this is very nicely. What follows from this gain of knowledge? Kim punaha jnana labhat syat iti. Winning knowledge, the peace supreme, liberation or withdrawal is attained without delay, immediately. That liberation immediately follows from right perception is the unshakable doctrine established by all the Shastras. So, Samyak darshanat kshiprameva moksha bhavati iti sarva shastra nyaya prasiddha sunishchitah artha. Samyak darshanat, through this equal vision, kshiprameva, immediately, with no delay, moksha bhavati iti, liberation follows. This sarva shastra, all the shastra, nyaya prasiddha sunishchitah artha. It is established. Unshakable doctrine. Atra samshayah na kartavyah papishto hi samshayah katham iti. No doubt is admissible in this respect. Doubt is most despicable indeed. How? Uchyate. Agyascha shraddhadhanascha samshayatma vinashyati nayam loko asti na paro na sukham samshayatmana. This is, doubt is condemned. Very, very powerful verse. Very, very powerful verse. So again, if you are familiar with Yoga Sutra, there are listed the obstacles. Vyadhi, Sthana, Samshaya. Third obstacle. Vyadhi is disease. If you have disease, cannot practice yoga. Diseased body is an impediment. Sthana. Sthana is a kind of apathy towards spirituality or apathy towards the practice. Samshaya, doubt. Right? So here Bhagavan is saying, why is this doubt so terrible? Why despicable? Agyascha, the ignorant, does not know. Ashraddhadhanascha, the unfaithful. Samshayatma, doubting self, perishes. Vinashyati. Na ayam loko asti, not this world, na paro, or beyond, is there, nor is there any happiness for the doubter. This is, you see, even for this world, in order to succeed in this world, you have to have faith in so many things. If you take a job, you have to have faith that the company will give you the paycheck the next time. The boss should be trusted and will lead you to the next career upliftment. All these faith is necessary, at least to some extent. Correct? Now, according to the nature of the human being's faith, their trajectory in life is like that. So if you have a lot of faith in money, the trajectory will lead to success in the world. A lot of faith in the boss, success in career. If you have a lot of faith in the Gita, it will lead to success in liberation. Right? So this, but nevertheless, what he's saying is you need faith in something. Without faith, even in this world, one cannot succeed. Let what alone, neither in this world or the next, nor sukha. Why? Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam atmavantam na karmani nibadhnanti dhananjaya. Yoga sanyasta karmanam jnana sanchinna samshayam. Arjuna, works bind not him who is vigilant. Who through yoga has renounced works. Yoga sanyasta karmanam, who has given up works through yoga, who has slain doubts with knowledge. Jnana sanchinna samshayam. Through knowledge, he has slain all the doubts. Atmavantam na karmani nibadhnanti. They do not bind the one who is vigilant through these ways. Right? Works do not bind him, who through the yoga of realization of the supreme reality has renounced all works, righteous and unrighteous, and so forth. So then we come to the concluding verse of this adhyaya. Tasmat ajnana sambhutam hritstham jnana sinatmanaha chitvainam samshayam yogam atishthottishtha bharata. Tasmat, therefore, ajnana sambhutam, born of ignorance, born of nescience, born of ignorance, hritstham, residing in the heart. There's doubt. Jnana sinatmanaha, jnana asi, sword of knowledge. Chitva, having cut asunder this nescience, this doubt. Yogam atishtha, resort to yoga, and uttishtha, stand up. Oh Bharat, right? Bharata Prince. So, iti Sri Mahabharate Shatasahasryam Samhitayam Vaiyasikyam Bhishma Parvani Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yogo Nama Chaturtho Adhyayah. Iti Srimad Rajaka Acharya Govinda Bhagavat Pujya Pada Shishya Srimad Shankara Bhagavatah Kritau Srimad Bhagavad Gita Bhashye Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yogo Brahma Yajna Prashansa Nama Chaturtho Adhyayah. So beautiful. Huh? So the final commentary, therefore slay this most wicked doubt in the heart or intellect, born of nescience or lack of discrimination. Slay it with the sword of knowledge or right perception. Knowledge of the self is the sword, and doubt has the self for its object. None may slay another's doubt. He who doubts about the self is the slayer thereof. Destroying this doubt that may work one's destruction, practice Karma Yoga, the means of right perception. Stand up to wage this battle, O Bharata Prince. So, same point came to me, memory of the Ishopanishad. So, you see, it starts as Ishavasyam idam sarvam yatkinchit jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bhunjitha magridha kasya svidhanam. Then, so Ishavasyam, know that all this is covered by the Lord. Whatever moves in this jagat, jagatyam jagat, tena tyaktena, giving up this jagat, bhunjitha, you can enjoy. Magridha, don't covet another person's wealth. Kasya svidhanam. But then second verse comes after that. Asurya nama loka andhena tamasavritaha. What are these worlds? Asurya, sunless worlds, which are covered in darkness. Right? And in the end, that verse characterizes who live in these worlds. Atmahanajana, the ones who have destroyed the self, meaning they have denied the self. How do you destroy Atmahana? How do you kill the self? With a capital S. Bhagavan has just said, you cannot kill it. Right? Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka. You cannot kill this self. So what does it mean to say Atmahana? It means you are denying its existence. You are doubting its existence. Is that clear?
Yes.
So that Atmaha don't be is what Bhagavan is saying. At all times, however depressed the mind is, never deny the self. Never deny Brahman. Never deny its manifestation as the Lord, as Saguna Brahman. This is the import. Right? however trying the times may be, which they will try the mind, they may torture the mind at all times, one should not lose heart and deny this. That is what Bhagavan is saying. Any questions? We ran a little long today, but I thought it'll be nice to complete the Adhyay.
Dr. Shankar, I have a small question.
Surely.
So, Shlok number 40 and 41 they mention a word ayagyaha.
Uh-huh.
So, is there a direct correlation between ayagyaha and yagyaha? Is there any at all?
Sorry, 41?
40 and 41. So, 40th Shlok says ayagyaha, cha ashraddhanaha.
Right, Ashraddhanaha.
Ashraddhanaha. So I was just wondering about the formation of words in Sanskrit. So is there a correlation between agyaha and yagyaha? Does yagyaha come from yat-gyaha?
So here I just take agyaha to be being negating the gya, right? That is clear, right? So that is just saying the one who doesn't have knowledge, right? So the question, is there a connection between yagya and agya?
So because the next verse says, just a second, I lost my. The next verse is saying,
I think the ayagya you're thinking came earlier.
Not there.
It came.
In Shlok number 42, it again says Agyana Sambhutam. So something that arises or that takes birth from Agyan. So that is Sanshay. So what I'm trying to ask is, when we perform yagyas, are those kind of activities that purify oneself from samshaya?
Absolutely. If think about it, right? So I don't know if you've ever, you have probably experienced in up close a yajna with home yajna with Agni and everything. If your mind is open, you will definitely feel very uplifted and purified, right? If it is done by someone who has that mantra bala, shabda bala, tapo bala, you feel it, right? So it is destroying in that sense of doubt, right?
So because gya is related to knowing, so
right.
So I'm just trying to understand the formation of the word yagya. Is it somehow related to knowing or removal of doubt?
That's a good question, Racy. Actually, to be honest, I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. We will have to do a little research project together.
I was just wondering about
on the etymology of yajna. No, it is not. I've not learned it and it hasn't presented itself to me. I'll meditate on it, and maybe we can also take practical approach.
Maybe I'm totally like correlating to different things. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I have not thought about it in that sense.
Because that shlok says agyaha gives rise to samshaya.
Right.
That's when I was thinking, by doing yagya, does it remove all samshayas?
Most certain. I mean, but well, that's a tricky one. I've also seen. I think it depends on samskaras also. Right. Now, there are some people you can take them to a yajna and they can find it very negative also. Some people don't like the Vedic chanting, right? So there is some difficulty in some past samskar that does not incline the mind towards that. So in that sense, I would not say it's guaranteed. But if the mind is open, then its effect will be unfailing. You see what I'm saying? Because I have encountered people who have almost an antipathy towards these things. So for them, other kinds of yajnas have to be performed in the outer world before mind feels purified enough to approach this.
Got it.
Right?
I have a question.
Zarur.
In
No
many
guarantee of answer, huh?
Yeah.
But we'll have fun.
Yeah. So whenever the Bhagwan uses the word yoga, does it always mean karma yoga?
This is one of the hardest questions you ask, because the truth is, yoga is used in many, many, many different ways in the Gita. Right?
For instance, in the last few slok that we read today,
Right.
what did it stand for?
So, right. So, for instance, to give you,
For instance, in the last slok, when Bhagwan says that Sanshaya is what stops you, so go beyond it and engage yourself in yoga.
Right. Right. So, so here the way Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya is interpreting it, he says practice karma yoga. So he says chitva enam samshayam swavinasha hetu bhutam yogam samyak darshanopayam karmanushtanam atishta kuru ityartha. Samyak darshana upayam karma anushtanam. So the means to seeing that same in everything, which is karma anushtanam, which is a discipline of doing karmas, right? You see what I'm saying? Yeah. So here, since this, you see the title of this chapter is Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, right? So if you notice, wherever yoga is used here, Bhagavan Sri Shankaracharya applies both. So I think in an earlier place also, yes. So if you look at number 38, Nahi jnanena sadrasham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yoga samsiddha kalena atmani vindati. So yoga samsiddha. So what is this yoga? Is perfected in yoga, right? But if we go into the commentary, Bhagavan Shankaracharya says, karma yogena samadhi yogena. So karma yoga and the samadhi yoga, which is corresponding to the jnana. Right? So both are cited. Right? In some sense, one cannot, unless probably for a very rare few, both have to be practiced at the same time. Right? In the daily world, engaged in activities, one cannot be always in the Raja Yoga and Samadhi, right? So one has to engage in the world. At that time, you may say you are doing Karma Yoga, right? Of a sort, right? But that alone is not enough, is the import of the whole chapter, right? It is a means to the next level, correct?
Okay.
So progressively, you can see this in a very practical way in your life, you know. Let's say you go about into the world and you're engaged in all the activities, and you have some desires, you have some aspirations. And as again, one of these very nice things that Swami Chinmayananda was saying was, the peculiar feature of life is whatever we desire, right, seems to be running faster away from us than we can catch up to it. And whatever we don't desire seems to never leave us. Right? If you reflect on it, if you divide the world into two things, one things that you want and one things that you want to avoid, it always seems that that which we want is running away faster from us. And that which we want to avoid never wants to leave us. Right? This is unfailingly true if you reflect on it. Now, this realization that in the world constantly I'm doing these things, but I seek a peace, right? I want some peace. I want something deeper than this. That is, so in that way, this Karma Yoga is proving to be a setting stage to then step into Jnana Yoga, right? which is why people try to have a daily practice. They try to retire 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, whether it be puja or it be yoga practice, pranayam, dhyan. Those get instigated by good karmas done in past births, now coming to fruition, right? So this combination is the best way. One cannot shut out the world and sit all day and say, I'm determined only in samadhi and that is going to be my state. Not practicable and suitable. Nor is it good to just say, I'll only be doing worldly activities and I don't want to have any connection with this. That also is not productive, right? Does that clarify?
Yeah.
Hello, Chetas. How are you doing?
I'm doing good.
Yeah, you've been patiently sitting for a long time today. How? Very good.
So Shankar, if you have time, can I ask one more question?
Of course, please.
So talking about this karma, so we have all these slokas that says like, basically say that do not think too much about the fruits of it. Like let's say karmanyavadikaraste or this tyaktva karma phala sangam. So that's one level, but when you look at the world, but what happens? So basically they say that the success comes when you are obsessed with the goal. So when you look at the famous people or whenever they listen to these interviews, that's what they say, because I was obsessed with that I want to succeed. That's why I became successful in.
Right.
So how do you resolve this thing? Like, and personally, how do you resolve this thing? And at the same time, how do we convey this to the younger generation? Like when they receive these two conflicting messages, as how to go about it?
It's a fantastic question. I love it. Yeah. And I can answer it. Yeah, definitely on a personal level. So, because that's most useful, right? So there's nothing wrong with that worldly message that we get. It is true that, and in a way it relates to what Bhagavan is saying even here. He says that the one who has faith is the one who succeeds. Right? So if you take a worldly goal like career, the more you think about it, definitely the greater your chances of succeeding at it, if you apply that thinking in a practical way. So when I started off as an assistant professor, I was very deeply interested in my research and to the exclusion of everything else. I used to think about it all the time. Even when I was in the mall, I would be catching a napkin and scribbling down some ideas. Right? Okay. Now, where does that lead? Okay, it leads to a certain level of success, undoubtedly, right? But then the mind, after a while, will start questioning. Okay, so let us say I've achieved success. So let's say in my field, publishing in this premier journal is a great mark of it. So you publish 1, you publish 2, you publish 10, you publish 15, you publish 20. After you do 20 of them, you really ask yourself whether number 21, does it give the same joy as the first one? It's good, it's great, right? It's wonderful, it's good in a way, but it does not deeply satisfy the mind permanently, right? Yeah. So, and you take that with anything, right? With anything that we pour our 100, you can pour focus into. Definitely that if it's a positive goal and the focus is applied correctly, success will follow. And one must cultivate it. It's practical, it's useful. But then the mind then starts to ask the deeper questions. Okay, so now I have achieved success in this. What next? Right? So I think it's worthwhile to enthuse our younger generation to apply themselves 100% in everything that they do, but not forget to ask, if the question arises, where to turn for the answers. Right?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I can relate to some of what you said, like when I started as a young faculty and versus now, I think.
Right. I mean, it is fun. There's nothing wrong with it, right? It's wonderful. It's great to engage the mind, intellectually challenge it, work with students, work with other researchers, produce something, discover new knowledge. It's wonderful. It's great. It's fantastic. But we must be foolish if you think that that is the be all and end all of life. It is not. Because even if you take the most brilliant scientists who were far brighter than me, at the end of the day, they still had questions. They didn't know everything. It did not fully satisfy them. Right? On the other hand, we look at certain gurus and there is a deep sense of abiding peace, wisdom, that is unshakable. There is a difference between what we call paravidya and aparavidya, or what we call, conventionally agyan and gyan. Right? Anyway, hope that helps.
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, well, if no more comments or questions, thank you all for joining. It was delightful, as always. So namaste. Let me say our Swasti Mantram, and then I will take my leave. Om Tacham Yora Vrunimahe Gatum Yajnayam Gatum Yajnapataye Daivihi Swastirastunaham Swastirmanushabhyah Urdhvam Jigatu Bheshajam Shanno Astu Dvipadehe Sham Chatushpade Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Namaste everyone. Very nice to see everyone. Namaste Durgesh ji.